Now, Dr. Vinika Rao, the Executive Director of the Gender Initiative from INSEAD, will discuss the impact of COVID-19 on gender balance and how that will impact building back for a better future. Dr. Rao? Dr. Rao, we are ready for you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm ready here
Please
too.
begin your presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful. I hope you can see and hear me now. Okay. Just let me know if something's unclear. Otherwise, I'm assuming that you can all hear and see me now. Well, hello, everyone. Depending on where in the world you're joining us from today, a very warm good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. I'm actually joining you from London, and if I look out of the window, it's early in the morning, and it promises to be another usual rainy London morning. But it's a real pleasure to be with you today for this very important discussion on a topic that I think you'll all agree is topical, and I'm sure it'll resonate with you. We will be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on gender balance and what we can do to counter the negative impact or that the pandemic has already had, so that we can come out of a post-pandemic world with gender balance not having been too badly affected. I'm going to try and share some slides with you very quickly. Bear with me just a minute, please. Okay. Faiz, can you help me with this, please? I'm trying to share some slides, but I can't seem to manage that. I've got Faiz on the phone with me trying to help me with this.
Yes, can you see the share option over there?
Share screen, yes.
Yes. So once you click on that, you can see a window tab on the right-hand side. Entire screen window, Chrome tag.
Yes, window is good.
Yes. So when you go on window, you will be able to see your presentation slides when they're open.
They are open, but I don't see them here.
Okay, just share in the entire screen and switch to your slides.
Do you see them now?
I'm unable to see them. Just click on the share button once you're done.
Okay, still trying. Working.
It's okay. It's okay. Well, what you can do is you can just speak. I'll share the slides later with everyone.
Oh, okay. Just, well, it's not going to make much sense without being. Shall I send you my slides perhaps quickly? Bear with us. Sorry.
Sure.
We can't seem to work this out. So how do I send this to you?
Send me an email quickly.
Okay, doing it now. Okay, there we go. I've sent it to Faiz. Hopefully he will be able to share them with you. Faiz, just let us know when you have the slides and you can turn them on and I can keep talking.
Yes.
Okay,
you can start.
Lovely. Okay, so if you share the slides so that we save some time, given that we've lost a minute or so, I can start from there. Anyway, so basically what we wanted to talk about was the fact that, even as the ramifications of COVID-19 continue to affect lives and livelihoods across the world, it is easy sometimes to forget the highly insidious impact that this pandemic is also having on gender balance. And what we want to try and do then is to talk through what the negative impact has been so far and what are some possible ways to sort of sift through this doom and gloom and try and find a silver lining, try and find a way to, to find ways to optimize the positives. Faiz, can you start sharing the slides, please? Looks like this is not working out so well. There, success. Perfect, thank you. If you can make it full screen, I can start off. Okay, so if we can move to this second slide, I wanted to share with you, a very quick look at some of the headlines that we've been seeing that are coming out in terms of some of the doom and gloom of COVID-19 on gender balance. Faiz, if you can take me to slide 2 and make it full screen, please. Thank you. I think it might be easier for everyone to see if you can make it full screen. There we go. Okay, so you've seen some of these headlines. I've picked them up from different newspapers across the world just because it's useful to get a sense of what's happening and what people are talking about. As you can see, there's a lot of fear about COVID-19 setting women back decades. As one of the panelists in the previous session was saying, gender balance or gender imbalance is not a problem for any one gender. It is a problem that affects everyone, men, women, companies, organizations, and nations. And so this is important for us to consider. Some of the things to highlight with respect to this pandemic as compared to other crises, health crises we've had, is that in other situations when there's been an economic crisis, men tend to get impacted more in terms of losing jobs, etc. But in this one, because of gender labor segregation, the nature of jobs that women hold in many countries, women have suffered more. You'll also see a statistic coming out of the McKinsey report that says 1 in 4 women are known to be considering downsizing their careers, which means that either they're deciding to just give up on their jobs completely, or they're taking a voluntary step back from what they have been doing or from the next progression in their careers. And this is happening because, kids are at home, there's continuing disruption with elder care, and in many societies, the burden of the second shift of work does tend to fall on the woman, because of which all this becomes an issue. We've also heard about more cases of domestic violence, family violence during COVID-19, which is creating a problem here. And of course, the gender pay gap, which already existed, has worsened during this crisis. If you could move to the next slide, please, Faiz. And do try and bring us to full screen if you can for the slides. Next slide, please. So the next slide that I'm hoping we'll be able to have with us very soon is a snapshot from the Global Gender Gap Report that comes out from the WEF every year, and I find this particular report very interesting. I always look at this to understand, what's really happening in the world as far as gender gaps are concerned. We seem to have lost the slides completely now. Okay, I'm just going to keep trying to talk through it as much as possible. Let me open the slideshow on my own computer here, and hopefully, I'll be able to explain it to you as we go along. Yes. So as you can see, at current trajectory, the worry is that it's going to take over 130 years to close the gender gap. So that I'm sure none of us is willing to wait a century for this situation to rectify itself. 5% of employed women have lost their jobs as compared to a lesser number of employed men, as we were seeing from the previous headlines too. There's been a 1 to 2 year reversal in women's hiring into leadership positions. You saw the panel previous to this one where they were talking about issues at leadership levels. One of the biggest problems we have is leaky pipeline, where women, even if a large number join in the workforce in various companies, perhaps as many or even more than men, in some companies, they tend to drop off as we go up the corporate ladder. And this problem has been exacerbated through the crises, through this pandemic. Longer double shift due to school closures, limited care services. So this is the dreaded second shift we speak about, which women are not paid to do, which is where right now they're having to manage their careers, manage technical issues, everything over Zoom, and manage their teams and make sure that they're doing well. At the same time, they're also having to, in many countries, many families, also bearing all the burden for childcare or learning from home if kids are forced to stay at home, for instance. And interestingly, even the so-called jobs of tomorrow, in some of the areas where we expect that, things will be much more equal, only 2 out of 8 of these modern jobs have actually reached gender parity. So another worrying statistic there. Next slide, please. I work with INSEAD in our gender initiative, and one of the aspects that comes up a lot, a question that we've been asked right from the beginning of this crisis, has been on the impact of this crisis on gender balance. And so if Faiz can show us the next slide, I'll show you a few statistics that we got from a survey that we had done recently into understanding what the impact has been. Faiz, can you take us to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Okay. All right. The slide that I was trying to show you indicated basically that we found that a large number of people felt that the future for gender balance will actually be worse than it's going to be than it was earlier, previous to the crisis. Now, if you see from this slide, you can see that this survey was done quite early in the crisis. This was done in May 2020, when we thought that, we were in the middle of the crisis and nobody imagined that we will still be continuing with it longer than a year afterwards. So at that point, these were the stats that came out. 57% of the people said that the situation was worse than it was going to be than it was earlier, and then 19% actually said it was better. So the next slide will show you what some of their concerns were. If we could move to the next slide, and I'm going to keep talking as we go along. So here are some of the concerns that people were highlighting, as you'll see from the word cloud, where they said that there's a lot of tension around work. How am I going to manage? I have the home to look after. I have cooking. I have care to do. I have childcare. I have my household to manage. So the tension between home and work, as you can see, was coming out loud and clear. Next slide, please. The other question that we asked was, okay, so if this is how you think the immediate impact has been, what do you expect the impact will be in the future? Next slide, please. Thank you. So how will gender balance be in the future relative to before COVID-19? So those of us who work with statistics will say that, this is a sort of a bimodal distribution where on both sides, if you average everything out, it looks like nothing much changes. But basically, we can say that 41% people did feel that in the future, the situation was going to be worse. However, 34% said better. So let's quickly think through why people were saying this. So the ones who said the situation would get worse, I think, are some of the reasons that we've already discussed. The fact that, there is a double shift, that women in many societies bear the brunt when more work builds up in the homestead. Now, the ones who were saying it'll get better had interesting reasons for saying so. One of the reasons was, of course, the whole idea of remote working and flexibility in work has become something that we all accept much more. And people have started to understand that this doesn't really affect productivity negatively. For a lot of people, it has influenced productivity positively. For instance, in my case, I certainly feel it's helped me a great deal. I would not have been able to participate in this conference if it had been held in person, this time around. And so it's been useful for a lot of us. And I think it's also helped because the mental models around who needs flexibility more or who will benefit from flexibility have also shifted. The assumption used to be women need it more, and women, only women will take advantage of this, etc. And we've realized that actually men are finding that it's been very useful for them too, and they feel very comfortable having flexibility. So that is something that has been positive. Other responders also talked about things like, fathers are now able to spend more time at home because many of them are working from home, and hence they potentially can contribute to the lives of their families. So that's another important point. If we can move to the next slide, please. So in terms of the tensions, what they were talking about, as you can see, we were talking about home, childcare, etc. Again, becoming more of an issue in this case in terms of the future challenges. Next slide, please. Time investment in gender balance. So we found interestingly that from our responders, as much as 70% almost did say that they're still spending at least a moderate amount of time on working on gender balance, despite the issues that all their companies were facing in terms of problems associated with the crisis. Mike, you're on. Surely I'm not out of time yet. It's barely been 7 minutes.
Dr. Rao, we thank you very much for your presentation. To keep on track, we will need to move forward to our next panel. We understand that you had some issues technically, and we'd like to share your presentation with the group at a later date. Is
Sure.
that okay?
Just give me 1 minute to wrap up, please. Just because I
Please.
feel bad about leaving the audience with with a sort of inconclusive presentation. So as Mike said, there was a lot more that we wanted to discuss, and it would have happened on time if these technical issues had been avoided. Can I at least perhaps, Mike, just share my last slide just to make sure that it's worth
Yes,
everybody's
please.
time investment? Faiz, if you can just
Please
take
go
us
to
to
the
the
last
last
slide.
slide, that'll be very useful. So basically what I was trying to do in the slides that I've not been able to show you all is to give you a sense of what the positives are and the steps that we can all take at this stage already in order to avoid this negative influence. So I'm trying to now have Faiz just show me the last slide, so at least I can share that one with the group before I'll exit. Okay.
Faiz, please go to the last slide. Very good. Thank
There
you.
we go. It's the previous one. Yes. Sorry, just the one slide just before this in terms of what you can do. There we go. Thank you. So this is for aspiring women leaders, and I'm sure there are many in the group, and including for women leaders who are already there. So some of the points that statistics would have shown through the research I was hoping to show you were, first of all, be true to yourself. What this means, of course, is that women don't have to start behaving like men in order to do well in the workplace. So let's optimize EQ. Let's optimize some of the things that women do better and stay with that. Don't be afraid to ask for what's due. One thing that comes up all the time is in terms of salary negotiation. We do find that even now, a lot of women hesitate to ask. And so HR leaders will tell us, you will never going to get what you don't ask for. So, let's be sure we do this. Zero tolerance of overt sexism. I think that's something that everybody understands. We are in a fortunate position in many ways in the workplace. You don't have to tolerate sexism. Optimize women's groups. This I find has been particularly useful in a lot of organizations. The Old Boys Network has existed for a long time. And so just making sure that now women can act for other women can be very useful. Another point to mention here is a lot of women have told me that they're very willing to include men in the discussions. And in fact, some of the organizations I work with, at least two, have had men leading the women's networks in their companies. And I think that's wonderful. My personal research is in the area of male allyship, which is something that the previous group was also talking about. And definitely gender balance is not the problem of any one gender, so men definitely need to be involved. Another point here, don't see barriers where they don't exist. Sometimes if a woman doesn't get promoted, it just might be because she's not the right person for the job. And it can sort of be, it's not something that we should always fall back upon. Be clear about compensation. If you feel that there is a wage gap in the organization, bring this up. Again, we're fortunate. Today is a time when people are willing to listen. So let's not, just keep quiet about this. Plan your career pragmatically. The good news is that, that COVID-19 has meant that a lot of the sort of frontiers between work and home have been mitigated. We know that now. We can't pretend that the people that we work with don't have families when their children show up in Zoom calls. And so planning our career pragmatically around the fact that a lot of us will want to perhaps get married, maybe have children. And so in that case, it's better to sort of factor that into your planning for your career, just as you make work decisions. And a final note, choose your partner wisely. And we have research to show that one of the most important business decisions you can make in your life, which can have a big impact, is in terms of the partner that you marry or choose to spend your time with. Thank you, Mike, for giving me that extra 1 minute. I did want to make sure that our audience gets something positive out of this presentation. And it's been a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao. We appreciate your understanding of our time. We apologize for the technical issues, and we will be able to share your presentation with all the other participants.